Something a little bit different today. I thought I'd just have a moment with you just to talk about the old learning process and go through some of the mistakes that I went through during my early days of learning the banjo. Obviously, we all start off and nobody is an expert on day one, and I'm no expert even now, coming up to 20 years of playing or struggling my way through the banjo. I can play a few tunes and that, and I know a little bit, and play a few chords, hold a rhythm, and do enough, to justify my place. Ultimately, becoming half decent at playing the banjo. So the first mistake that I made was rushing to the banjo shop or to the music shop, grabbing the first banjo that I could find, asking them what I needed, running home, sticking the DVD into the player and just sitting there and playing before I'd even really considered what it was that I was doing. Because, why would I? Why would you need to do research? It's a banjo, and I wanted to learn to play the banjo. So I got a banjo DVD and a banjo, and I decided to sit down and learn how to play it. But if I'd have done my research beforehand, I probably would have then learned and realised that there wasn't just one way to learn how to play the banjo, and I would have saved myself 2 years of struggling my way through the finger picking scrug style, which, to be fair, I did enjoy it at first. When I got my banjo home and I put that DVD in and I sat there with my finger picks on and I was plucking away, and 12 months later I'm still plucking away, and yeah, I kind of enjoyed it. But what I'd find myself doing was I'd be picking my way through a tune and I wasn't hearing the song that I was playing, I was just picking away, and something eventually, it just got to the point where I wasn't enjoying it anymore. It felt too technical for me and I wasn't getting what I wanted from it. And then it wasn't until a year after sort of giving up or not playing for a while, I discovered the clawhammer style of playing. And I remember watching the fella on YouTube when I heard clawhammer for the first time, and it was frailing away like... I was watching him thinking, how on earth is he doing that with finger picks? Just like, because this was back in 2008 when the internet, when YouTube was just first really starting and all the videos were really grainy and hard to look at. I'm like, how is he doing that with finger picks? There's no way he's doing that, making that, that rhythmic sound. And then when he announced on the video that he just uses a fingernail to play it, and I'm like, what? You can actually play the banjo without these finger picks? And that was my sort of ignition into the world of clawhammer banjo, and that was me then hooked from that moment on. The second mistake, looking back now, was, it probably wasn't my fault because there was not many banjo teachers where I'm from, and I was given this DVD, so I'm assuming that there's only one way to learn the banjo. So the second mistake that I made was trusting one source as being the way to learn the banjo. And because of that, I ended up watching that DVD that I mentioned at the start for the best part of 18 months. And it got to a point where I was halfway through the DVD and I just couldn't absorb the information anymore. It's like as if the teacher was just not... I wasn't resonating, it wasn't going in, I wasn't learning anything. And for that reason, I think just diversify your learning. We're blessed now, aren't we? We're blessed with the internet. It's an infinite resource of free information. And there's countless teachers playing banjo. There's 2 finger picking, there's 3 finger picking, there's clawhammer, there's free courses, there's all kinds of brilliant good stuff now all over the internet. And the pendulum's probably gone the opposite way now, whereas before there was a bit of a shortage. Now it's overwhelming with the amount of stuff that you can learn and discover. So it's good in a way because then you can obviously diversify your learning. You can look at different teachers teaching the same thing 3 different ways, and 2 of them might register with you and the third one might not. So it's just a case of watching multiple lessons, finding someone who's half decent, who talks your language and can explain things in a way that sinks into your subconscious and you can actually understand what they're talking about. Because for me, I used to have a problem with the experts, you know, the super fast up and down the neck banjo players talking about scales and talking about music theory, and straight over my head it went. And some of the best banjo lessons that I ever watched on YouTube weren't from the experts, it was from just people, ordinary people, not even teachers, who set the webcams up and they just sit there and explain something just like one note at a time and nice and slow, and I'd be watching it and I'd be taking it in. And some of the best lessons that I received weren't even lessons, they were just people chatting away, just demonstrating something that they've learned at a recent jam session or whatever. So yeah, so that would be number 2, would be to absolutely, you know, diversify your learning. Use everything at your disposal, you know, books, free courses, lessons, paid courses if you want to spend a bit of cash, DVDs, whatever you can get your hands on, you know, just use everything at your disposal, and don't just assume that there's just one way to learn and there's only one teacher and that teacher can teach that one particular way. Because the beauty of banjo, you know, it's been around for centuries and there's no clear defined one path. You know, if you're learning something like classical piano, they have accreditation systems, you know, exams and tests, and they have grading systems. So somebody in, I don't know, Aberdeen who's on a grade 3 is at the same level as someone in somewhere down south, you know, Penzance, on the same grade. You know, these grading systems are there to standardise the whole learning process for certain instruments, but not for the banjo. And for that reason, I think it's amazing, because we all learn our own way, we all learn our own pace, we all come out the learning process a little different, and everyone develops their own styles and their own sounds. And I think that's fantastic, because we don't all want to end up sounding the same, do we? We don't want to sound like me either. Another mistake that I made was focusing on the technicalities too soon, focusing on the daft stuff like the slide, hammer-ons, pull-offs, embellishments, and doing all that fancy stuff, then trying to play faster than my abilities. Because, you know, playing too fast and not developing that core foundation of fundamental skills, you know, timing and rhythm and momentum, and the ability to fret chords and do it in time with the rhythm. Basic skills, and we tend to just surpass them. We tend to think, especially for clawhammer, you know, once you the basic frailing strum, you can be taught that in a matter of minutes. You know, someone sat in front of you can say, you know, just strike the string, strum, thumb. Yeah, that's true, but you know, it takes hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of repetition to get that timing perfect. And if you're working on the clawhammer, perhaps check out my free mini course on banjoadventures.com. I've got a free mini course, and if you're brand new to banjo, or if you just get back into it, it'll get you playing your first rhythm, that basic frailing strum. You know, play your first chord and just build that confidence up. Just get you to a point where you feel like, yes, I'm doing it. I'm making sounds on the banjo that don't sound like two cats having a scrap in the back street. I've lost count now. Another mistake for me would be just the lack of direction. It's a tricky one, because when you're first starting off, you don't know what you don't know. So it's hard, you know, it's like when you first get a new job and you sit there on day one and you're thinking to yourself, you know, I shouldn't be here, man. I should not be here. I lied on my CV a little bit and now I'm here in this position and people are asking me questions. I don't have a clue what I'm supposed to be doing. And then, lo and behold, a month later, you know exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And not only that, but you're teaching the new starters and you're in a position where your skill level is above what you would ever believe from day one. And it's the exact same thing with learning this, you know, on day one you're picking it up, you're uncomfortable, you don't know what to do, you don't even know how your hands are going to cooperate, but they do eventually. And with that, you know, we learn the skills, and there's lots and lots of courses online that tell you like level 1, level 2, level 3. And you get to a certain point where you've learned some core fundamentals, some skills, and then you find a lot of the time you get stuck in this, you know, what next? What next? Where do we go from here? And there's like 1,000 different avenues to branch off, and there's no clear, what should I do next? Because there isn't really, there's no finish line. And I always say that in a lot of my videos. There's no, you know, we're brought up through school to like do exams and pass exams, and when you complete school, you finish school, and you complete high school, you get a certificate. And with learning a skill like this, there's no completion. It's not like a jigsaw puzzle where you put the final piece in and you're done 100%, that's completed, that's finished. Learning the banjo, it's like a series of infinite mini challenges. Look at each mini challenge as its own individual conquest, and then once you've learnt that, you know, it's time to move on to the next thing. But what is the next thing? And that's totally up to you. You know, there's 1,000 next things. You know, whether it's a new song that you want to learn, or a new skill, a new chord, a new embellishment, a new this or that, it never ends. And there's infinite next things. I've got a full list of next things that I need to learn. And what you tend to find is you look at your next thing, whatever you choose it to be, whether it's mastering that C chord or even the F chord, you know, which everyone struggles with. And you think to yourself, I'll never be able to do that. It's too difficult. And then lo and behold, one day you'll master it. And sometimes mastering something can be just as demotivating as not being able to do it, you know, because you'll be struggling, and one day it'll just click, and then once it clicks, you're quite comfortable doing it, and then you're thinking, now what? What next? Where do I go from here? And it's always good to have like a list of things that you want to do next, you know. So yeah, what next? Let me know in the comments what your next thing is that you're going to learn. I remember once upon a time I listened to Steve Martin's Clawhammer medley, and I thought to myself, I need to learn that. For a long time, that was my what's next. And I remember I spent weeks and weeks and weeks, and I learned every single tune on the medley, and I could play it without even looking at the tabs, and learnt it from memory. And that was that, and I completed it, and I was like, I'm happy with that. And then over the years, it's just kind of like vanished from my memory now. I can't even remember all the songs that are in it, apart from one, which was Loch Lomond. And I still play Loch Lomond quite a lot because it's one of them tunes that I just love to hear. And that takes me on to the next thing, which is learn. If you are learning, you know, learn what you want to learn. Don't learn what everybody expects you to play. Don't, you know, fall into the trap of learning Deliverance because that's what everybody wants you to play in dueling banjos. You know, learn it, obviously. And then everybody will be asking you to play it, which is fine. But there's so many other brilliant songs out there that are just so much better than the standard ones, you know, Rocky Top and Deliverance and the Foggy Mountain Breakdown, and people always ask you to play them. Obviously learn them, but don't set your heart on, you know, spending hours and hours and weeks, unless you really enjoy them tunes. I don't particularly like them tunes, you know, I don't particularly like dueling banjos. I'll play it because people want to hear it, but as far as song goes, it's not the most enjoyable song to listen to. This video is quite long. The next thing for me would be, the next mistake is not actually enjoying the learning process. Now looking back, obviously I enjoy just relaxing with my banjo, just play a few tunes from memory. And that was the whole reason why I wanted to learn it. I wanted to learn it and just be able to play songs from memory, relax on a hammock or in front of an open fire and just enjoy being able to play tunes. And, you know, without trying to sound like I'm showing off, I got to that point relatively quickly. It took me about 3 years before I could play my first, you know, 3 or 4 tunes from memory. and it got to a point where I could have a beer in the garden and just relax and play a tune after a barbecue, around a wood fire. And looking back, up until that point, it was always a challenge. I need to get better at this and do better at that and get better at frailing. And now I'm quite older and a little bit wiser than what I first was. I can now look back and appreciate that the actual learning process, from start to finish, was an enjoyable experience. Maybe I didn't enjoy it as much at the time, and going back, I probably would take more time to, log my progress, log each day's progress, because I think that's important. I think a lot of banjo players probably give up, not because they are not improving, but just because they aren't able to see how far they've come from day one. Because you improve every day, progress is very hard to see, especially when you're learning by yourself. I learned all by myself, no teachers, no nothing. And I kept a couple of notebooks, which I've since lost. And I've got a couple of scribblings somewhere, and I've got the odd 1 or 2 videos knocking about, but nothing solid, nothing that I can look back on and see like day 1, day 2, day 3. And I think because we don't log the progress, we can always look back and think, you've not learned anything, or you're not progressing, or because we're constantly looking forward, you never take the time to just see what you've got in front of you, how much you've learned since day 1, and how much you've progressed, from the first day that you started. So I wrote this journal just for that reason, so you can actually log your progress. This is like a 6-month learning banjo from scratch learning journal. So it's basically, it's like a course for beginners, a banjo course for beginners. You can buy it on the website banjoadventures.com, and it'll just guide you through your full learning experience, your full first 6 months. And you can log your progress down. It gives you prompts to record yourself, and it's got some QR codes for some exclusive video lessons that are only available to Banjo Adventures members. So you can have a look at that if you want to log your progress, or just get yourself a little scrapbook. That's another thing that you could do, and just record yourself, an audio recording every now and again, and just listen to it back in 3 or 4 weeks' time, and then record yourself again. And this video is quite long, so I think I might do 2 parts of this. Let me know if you've enjoyed this. If you have, let me know in the comments, and I'll do a part 2, because the amount of mistakes that I've made, I could just go on forever and ever, never talking about this kind of thing. But I hope that it helps you if you are just starting out, or if you're getting back into it, or if you're looking to get some reassurance that your mistakes aren't just exclusive to you, that everybody makes the same mistakes, whether it's technical or mindset mistakes, or you've just approached something the wrong way, or you've got your own preconceptions, and you just need that reassurance. But just let me know in the comments if you've got any of your own mistakes, and obviously you can share that with the community and just let people know, and encourage each other, because that's what it's all about. There's no egos, there's no, none of us are experts, are we? We're all just learning this skill. We're all just having fun with it, playing some music, and sharing the knowledge. Love this tune. It's Sail Away Ladies. I've been playing it for ages. Yeah, let me know in the comments, and I'll do another part 2 if you've enjoyed it. So I'll see you on the next one.